Let's talk about confidence. Season 2, Episode 12. Being alive in your work beyond being good at your job. Welcome to Let's Talk About Confidence. I'm John M. Walsh. This is the final solo episode of Season 2, and I wanted to end with something that matters more than most of the topics we've covered. The difference between being good at your job and being alive in your work. They sound similar, but they're not. Being good at your job is about competence. It's about delivering, meeting expectations, getting the work done to a standard that keeps you employed and advancing. Being alive in your work is something else entirely. It's about engagement, it's about energy. It's that sense that what you're doing actually matters to you, not just to the organisation, not just to your career, but to the person you're becoming. Being good at your job isn't the same as being alive in your work. One pays the bills, the other makes them worth paying. This episode is about noticing the difference and having the courage to do something about it. Here's a pattern I see constantly in my work with clients. Someone becomes very good at something, so good that opportunities follow. Promotions, recognition, financial reward. And somewhere along the way, they stop asking whether they actually want to do this because they're succeeding at it. That's the competence trap. You're so good at what you do that you can't imagine doing anything else, even when it's draining you. Your skill becomes a cage. The competence trap sounds like this. I've invested so much in this career. I'm finally being recognised. I'd be crazy to walk away now. This is what I'm known for. I wouldn't know what else to do. But capability isn't the same as calling. Being good at something doesn't mean you should do it forever. Let me tell you about someone I worked with. He's called James. James was a finance director at a mid-sized company. He'd been in finance his entire career, more than 20 years. He was really, really good at it. He'd built a reputation, a network, and a salary that reflected his expertise. But he was miserable. Not dramatically miserable. He wasn't having breakdowns or burning out in obvious ways. It was quieter than that. It was a grey feeling that settled over everything, a sense of going through the motions. Looking forward to retirement way ahead of time, like years ahead of time. A life that looked successful from the outside but felt hollow from the inside. When I asked him why did he stay? He said, because I'm good at it and I don't know what else to do. That's the competence trap. He was using his skills as a reason to stay in something that was no longer working for him. Here's the neuroscience of why achievement stops satisfying. Your nervous system adapts to whatever becomes normal, a phenomena called hedonic adaptation. The promotion that thrilled you becomes baseline within months. The salary that felt abundant becomes expected. The recognition that once energised you becomes routine. This is why external achievements alone don't create lasting satisfaction. Your brain recalibrates. What was once exciting becomes the new neutral. Meaning adapts more slowly than pleasure, and purpose is more stable than achievement. If your work only provides external rewards, money, status, recognition, you'll be on a treadmill forever, always needing the next achievement to feel okay, and it'll never be enough. So how do you know if you're caught in the competence trap? How do you distinguish normal work frustration from, say, genuine misalignment? Here's a couple of things to look for. You're bored despite being busy. There's plenty to do, but none of it engages you. You're going through the motions. The work that used to challenge you now feels routine. Sunday dread is constant. Not occasional stress, but a persistent heaviness about returning to work on Monday. The weekend ends up not being about recovery. It's just a delay for going back to work on Monday. You stop learning. The role no longer stretches you. You can do it in your sleep and often feel like you do. There's nothing new to figure out, nothing that requires real growth. You fantasise about different work, not just vacations, different careers, different paths, different versions of your professional life. Your imagination keeps showing you alternatives. And success feels hollow. You hit targets, receive praise, earn bonuses, and feel almost nothing. The external markers of achievement don't translate to internal satisfaction anymore. And the final one, you're exhausted in ways that rest doesn't fix. This isn't tiredness from hard work, it's depletion from meaningless work, a kind of fatigue that sleep doesn't touch, because the cause isn't physical. If you've got one or two of these, that's normal. All of them persistently, that's information worth paying attention to. Being alive in your work isn't about loving every moment. It isn't about work being easy or fun all the time. Work that makes you feel alive often includes difficulty, challenge, frustration. The difference is that the difficulty matters. You're struggling towards something meaningful, not just struggling. Research from self-determination theory, they're developed by psychologists Edward Deci and Richard Ryan. They identify 3 psychological needs that, when we meet, create intrinsic motivation and well-being. Number 1's autonomy, having meaningful choice over what you do and how you do it. Second is competence, experience mastery and growth, the feeling that you're getting better at something that matters. And connection, working with people you respect on things that contribute to something larger than yourself. When your work meets these 3 needs, you don't need external rewards to feel motivated. The work itself is rewarding. When your work doesn't meet these needs, no amount of salary or status will make it feel meaningful. Let me just return to James for a moment. When I asked him to assess his role against these 3 criteria, the picture became super clear. Autonomy, he had very little. The role was heavily constrained by process, compliance and expectations. He'd no part in setting them. Competence, he'd plateaued years ago. There was nothing left to learn in finance that excited him. And connection, he liked his colleagues, but the work itself felt disconnected from anything he cared about. He was producing reports that he felt went into a black hole. No wonder he was drained. He was succeeding at a role that met none of his psychological needs. The question then became, what would meet those needs? What would being alive in his work actually look like? If you recognise yourself in what I've been describing, the question becomes, what do you do about it? Let's look at a few ideas. First is stop waiting for permission. No one's going to tap you on the shoulder and say, you probably pursue work that actually matters to you. You should do that. That permission doesn't come from outside. It comes from you. Second is audit your current role for the elements of aliveness. Where is there autonomy, even in small pockets, in your job? Where are you still learning and growing? And where do you feel connected to something larger than the task you're doing? Sometimes aliveness isn't absent. It's just buried under process and expectation. So before you go about leaving, moving on, make sure you've actually explored what's possible where you are. Third is experiment before you leap. You don't have to quit your job to discover what makes you feel alive. You can test ideas in small ways. Side projects, volunteering, maybe even just conversations with people doing work that interests you. Skills you develop outside of work that might actually become part of work. The goal of experimentation isn't to find the perfect answer. It's to gather enough information as to what energises you, what depletes you, what makes time disappear, what makes you watch the clock. James didn't quit his finance role immediately. Instead, he started volunteering with a charity that helped young people with financial literacy. It was still finance, but applied in what he felt the context was meaningful to him. Within a year, that volunteer work had led to conversations which led to an opportunity to lead a social enterprise. He did take a significant pay cut, but he also, for the first time in years, felt like he was doing something that really mattered. And fourth is accept that aliveness has costs. The path to work that makes you feel alive isn't always easier. It might pay less, might be less stable, might even confuse people who thought they knew what you were doing with your career. But the cost of staying in work that deadens you is real too. It just doesn't show up in a balance sheet. I want to be honest about something though. Choosing work that makes you feel alive requires confidence, the kind of confidence we've been talking about all season. It requires confidence to admit that what you're doing isn't working, even if it looks successful from the outside. It requires confidence to explore alternatives when you don't know what they are yet. It requires confidence to tolerate the uncertainty of change, the judgment of others, the possibility that you might be wrong. Most people stay in unfulfilling work not because they lack options, but because they lack the confidence to pursue them. They tell themselves it's practical, responsible, mature. It's what grown-ups do. What they really mean is it's safe, and safe often means slowly dying without anyone noticing. I'm not suggesting you abandon all responsibility. I'm not saying you should quit your job tomorrow with no plan. What I am saying is that alive in your work is not an unrealistic expectation. It's not naive or indulgent to want your work to matter to you. That's a legitimate human need. And if your current work doesn't meet that need, despite the salary, despite the title, despite the years you've invested, that's worth taking seriously. It's worth thinking about. The question isn't whether you can afford to pursue work that makes you feel alive. The question is whether you can afford not to. As we close this season, I want to step back and connect the threads. We started with why capable people settle for less than they're capable of. We explored values and vision, building a life that fits, rather than a life that just looks impressive. We talked about decisions as identity, about clarity versus certainty, about saying no to the wrong things, and recognising who grows you and who grows with you and who holds you back. All of it, every episode, has been pointing towards one question. What does a confident life actually look like for you? Not generic life, not someone else's definition of success, your definition. A confident life isn't about feeling certain all the time. It's about trusting yourself to navigate uncertainty. It isn't about never failing. It's about knowing you recover when you do. It isn't about having all the answers. It's about being willing to ask better questions. And a confident life includes being alive in your work. Because you spend too many hours working to spend them feeling dead inside. Because your energy is too valuable to waste on things that don't matter to you. And because you deserve better than this grey feeling, this grey competence. Here's what I want you to take from this season. Confidence isn't a feeling. It's a relationship with yourself. It's built slowly through decisions that align with who you're becoming. Through boundaries that protect your energy. Through relationships that support your growth. And through work that makes you feel alive rather than just employed. You don't have to have it all figured out. You just have to keep moving in a direction that feels true. If you've been listening to this season and recognising yourself, if been nodding, taking notes, wondering whether things could be different, I want you to know something, they can be different. Not overnight, not without effort, not without moments of doubt, but differently. The life you've been imagining, the one where your work matters, your relationships support you, your energy goes towards things that count, that life is available to you. You just have to choose it. Step by step, decision by decision, action by action, day by day. Thank you for listening to Season 2 of Let's Talk About Confidence. If this season has helped you share it with someone who might need it, leave us a review and let me know what you'd like to hear in Season 3. I'm John M. Walsh. This is Let's Talk About Confidence. Take care of yourselves and I'll see you next season.